What if you sacrificed years of your life in pursuit of early retirement, only to find yourself reaching that milestone and feeling unfulfilled? Or worse, what if life throws you a curveball and you never even get to early retirement and never get to enjoy the fruits of your labor? In this video, I'm going to challenge the assumption that early retirement should be your goal. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why early retirement is not all it's cracked up to be. So let's get into it. Before we share the reasons why early retirement is overrated, let's first provide some important context. Early retirement has been a thing for some time. I bet if you were to stop and think, there's likely someone in your extended family or your social network that retired in their 50s or even their 40s. People have been retiring early for decades, if not centuries. While it's been around for some time, early retirement has risen in popularity with the increased notoriety of the FIRE movement. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Many people have influenced the rise of the FIRE movement, but none are more important than Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, who published the book Your Money or Your Life. I already shared a video review of this book, so I won't go into too much detail on the key concepts, but I'll link to this video up here if you want to watch this video next. Your Money or Your Life introduced a key concept that retirement is a number, not an age. While most people just assume that you will work for 40 to 50 years until you're unable to continue doing so, the authors of this book explain the math behind retirement. They explain that you can stop working once you have enough passive income or a large enough investment portfolio to generate that passive income that will exceed your living expenses. Once you reach this crossover point, when your passive income exceeds your expenses, you can retire and never work another day in your life. The FIRE movement was born out of this book and these fundamental ideas. Bloggers and key influencers in the 2010s took these concepts and brought them to the extreme. A number of individuals learned that if they had a high enough savings rate, they could generate enough wealth to be able to retire not just in their 50s or 40s, but even in their 30s or 20s. The FIRE movement's popularity increased as more and more stories surface of individuals or families retiring in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. For this reason, early retirement became synonymous with the FIRE movement, at least for many people. This has led to a growing problem for the FIRE movement, which is a hyper-focus on early retirement. My husband and I have been pursuing financial independence for a while now, but early retirement is not our goal. I talked a little bit more about our focus in our video about slow financial independence. In our pursuit of financial independence, we've talked to so many people who have already reached financial independence and have retired early. And most, if not all, of them have said things like this:
Don't do it the same way I did.
This includes Carl from 1500days.com, who describes his path to financial independence as a death march. He's repeatedly said things like, I was convinced that FI would solve my problems, so I went full throttle the entire time with no rest. This was not smart. Do not repeat. It's the conviction of those who have come before us, who have shared their experience, that has pushed us to create this video. Their message is this: early retirement is a shiny object that can distract us. Instead of focusing on it, we can spend our time and energy on better goals. Make sure you stick around until the end, because we'll talk about alternative goals that will improve your life more than striving for early retirement. So let's get into the 3 reasons why early retirement is overrated. The first reason is that early retirement can be isolating and impact you psychologically. This is contrary to what almost everyone else will tell you. Early retirement is often presented as eternal bliss, but this isn't necessarily the truth. When you retire early, what happens is that you gain a lot more freedom all at once. This has a couple of negative psychological impacts. The first is that it can be really isolating. Most of us, including myself, have built a social network of similarly aged individuals. And if you retire, that means that the vast majority of your social network will still be working. This gives you a lot of time freedom with no one or very few people to spend your time with. While I haven't retired, I did transition from a full-time traditional job to a part-time job, and then later to self-employment that provided me with even more freedom. What I found is that I had a lot more time and energy to socialize than the average person. Initially, it was difficult to find people to hang out with, and it took me a lot of time to find people to join me on midweek activities. This was a huge adjustment for me, and I wasn't even shifting to full early retirement. I can't imagine how much more challenging it would be if I were to retire early. The second psychological impact is on your self-perception. Too many of us associate our self-identity with our work. When we introduce ourselves, we often lead with what we do for work. And so, transitioning from a full-time career to retirement, regardless of when you do it, is a major life event. This life event often leads to an identity crisis as you go from who you were in your professional life to a life without that identity. The point I'm making here is not that you should continue to grind it out at a full-time job forever. In fact, it would be healthy to stop identifying so closely with your profession right now. Instead, though, my point is that you need to be aware of the huge adjustment that comes with early retirement. For those who are already subscribed to the channel and have seen our video on semi-retirement, you'll also know that I'm a huge fan of that approach. If you haven't seen that video, it's definitely worth a watch. The second reason that early retirement is overrated is that you likely don't actually want to retire early. It's way more likely that you actually want a new job or a new work arrangement. Let me explain. Too often, people chase early retirement because they're in a toxic job. But instead of finding a new job or a better work environment, they put their head down and put all their energy towards retiring early. How do I know this? Because I've been there. In 2018, when my husband and I officially, intentionally decided to pursue financial independence, a driving motivation was my toxic job. I was in a terrible situation, and we decided to pursue financial independence to eventually get out of this requirement to work. What I soon realized was that I could not last another 8 to 10 years until I got out of this toxic situation. And in fact, my body shut down and said, you can't actually make it another month. I ended up experiencing severe anxiety and depression, so much so that I had to take an unplanned 6-month leave of absence. What I've realized since then is that financial freedom is not all or nothing. It's not some magical line that you cross once you hit your FIRE number. Instead, financial freedom is a spectrum. And as you build wealth, you gain even more options, freedom, and flexibility. So stop and consider what you want most. I doubt that the first thing that comes to your mind would be early retirement. Instead, you might say, I want to spend more time with my family. I want to work on things that I enjoy and not do all of the other stuff. I want to work when I feel like it. Or even, I want to work for part of the year and have long periods where I can travel and see the world. Do you see the difference? Early retirement is not the end all be all. It's not the ultimate goal. Instead, it is one way of achieving the things that so many of us want. And we shouldn't confuse the two. Instead of spreading this myth that we actually want to achieve early retirement, let's do a better job of describing what our goals actually are. The third and last reason that early retirement is overrated is that you can unlock that same freedom and flexibility long before you reach financial independence or the point where you could retire early. As I mentioned before, financial independence is not all or nothing. You can leverage the incremental financial freedom that you gain along the path to FI to improve your life today. This will look different for each person, but here's what it could mean for you: finding a job that you enjoy more, choosing to work part time, working seasonally, quitting that time consuming side hustle so that you have more time for other things, and so many more options. The options are only limited by our creativity and what we see others doing. So, what do you think? Is early retirement overrated? Let me know in the comments below. Understanding this concept is one thing, acting on it is another. And it can be really challenging to figure out what you actually want as you gain more financial freedom. That's why I created this video on lifestyle design. It walks you through the design process that I've built over the years and use with my paid clients in my coaching program. Check it out to learn about a concrete process to figure out what you really want. And hint, it's not early retirement. As always, thanks for watching, and remember to enjoy the journey.